How much do answering services cost? A complete buyer's guide for answering service cost questions. On the low end, you will pay $1.37 per minute, while on the high end, you'll pay $1.65. Additionally, you may also pay per call. Let's get informed. When you buy something, you want to know that you're getting your money's worth. You don't want to pay too much, but you're willing to pay enough to ensure your business runs well. Simply put, you should always price something before purchase. Answering services are no different from any other product. It's always a good idea to research how much you'll pay. An answering service can make your job much easier. Having someone manage your telecommunications ensures you reach the maximum amount of customers. But answering services aren't easy to price. The cost of answering services depends on different factors, like how companies charge for their services and what services they provide. This guide to answering service costs has everything you need to know. What should you expect to pay for answering services? How much will a reliable answering service cost your business? Here are some of the national average price points. Monthly base rates: $39 to $255. Cost per minute: $1.39 to $4.25. Cost per call: 79 cents to $3.75. Medical answering service per month: $121 to $723. Legal answering service per month: $98 to $482. Home services: roofing, HVAC, windows, etc., $74 to $375. Depending on the partner, a most common base rate ranges between $39 to $150. Total monthly cost is mostly driven by your overall operator time used, average $135 to $225 per month. Before we discuss how much you should expect to pay for an answering service, we should discuss the service itself. Answering services are an alternative solution to hiring a receptionist. You may be thinking, why would I pay for something like this? There are a lot of smart reasons to hire an answering service. Small businesses, in particular, likely can't keep up with multiple calls. Answering services consist of teams of people that receive calls for your company, answer client questions, document information provided by clients and give it to the company, process sales orders, schedule appointments. You can also specify parameters for the answering service. You can have the service take calls once you've clocked out for the day. The answering service may also come in handy if you've got more incoming calls than usual. As earlier implied, you can set the price depending on your needs. A call service may charge you per minute, per call, or unit, billing per minute. Per-minute billing is the most common way answering services charge their clientele. Per-minute billing means that people are charged depending on the duration of the call. Most answering services consider this the gold standard of charging clients because it most accurately bills the client for how much time the service spends with the client's customers. Buyer beware. While this is the gold standard of billing, there are a few billing practices that you'll definitely want to be aware of. Here are a few. Billing increments. Avoid 1-minute billing increments. Look for options between 1-second and 20-second increments. This alone will reduce your bill by as much as 38%. Fee for message delivery. Avoid companies that charge an additional fee to forward your message by email or text. The majority of companies offer this as a free standard service, but there are a few who will attempt to charge as much as 25 cents per message delivered. 28-day billing cycles. It may not sound like a big deal, but companies that bill in 28-day billing cycles actually end up costing you an extra month of service by the end of the year. Weigh this out with the overall charges. It'll be difficult to find services that bill less than $1.35 per operator minute. The most can expect to pay for bill per minute answering services is about $1.37. Many answering services have various plans with set limits. High call volume needs. For example, you may see a plan for 500 minutes. 500 minutes is often the best plan for companies receiving many calls. Think of it like this. You get an allotment of 500 minutes per month and pay a flat rate between $680 and $1,080. You can expect additional charges if you receive calls beyond the minute allotment. Continuing with the 500-minute example, if you receive calls after using all the provided time, you get an additional charge per extra call. Clients can also choose plans that account for anticipated call volumes. You can customize your answering service plan outside of the per-arranged plans. Let's say the company you choose has 100, 200, and 500-minute plans. The 500-minute plan is the highest amount of preset time you can choose. Low call volume needs for smaller businesses. It's often wiser to consider pay-as-you-go options. In such cases, you may pay a higher price per call or per minute, but your overall investment is going to be less. These plans typically allow you to pay a flat rate for operator time or eats called answered. Depending on duration and services, the cost will vary, but it's worth getting a plan that works for your company. Billing per call. Billing per call means the price of answering services depends on how many calls they get. Specific circumstances may create additional rates. Customers may pay for customers hanging up and wrong numbers. The cost of answering services per call may range from 59 cents to $1.50. Billing per unit. Many people may find billing per unit somewhat tricky to grasp. Per unit, billing encompasses every possible thing you could account for in the call management process. You receive charges for things like inbound calls, transferred calls, messages. Billing per minute and call may cost less for many businesses and are easier to calculate costs for before purchase. Billing per minute has the advantage of being easier to understand as it more accurately reflects service costs. How to calculate the monthly price of answering services. No two answering services charge precisely the same. We mentioned how it's a good idea to know how much something costs before you purchase it. Another good practice before enlisting a phone answering service is to budget out your needs. Below is a helpful guide to calculating how much you'll spend each month on your phone answering service. 1. Figure out the number of daily unanswered calls. The first step is simple. Go into your call log and figure out how many calls your company misses daily. The numbers may not look the same each day, but you'll begin to see a pattern if you look about a month back. 2. Calculate the average call duration. You can also find the average length of each call in your call logs. Knowing that the average company call lasts about 4 minutes might be helpful. 3. Multiply the number of unanswered calls by call length. The way this equation works is that you'll multiply how many unanswered calls you get times call length times 30. Let's say you have 15 unanswered daily calls, and each answered call is about 4 minutes long. You should have something that looks like 15 by 4 by 30. Your answer will be 1,800. You'll need 1,800 overflow minutes monthly to accommodate every call you receive. 4. Multiply call overflow by the provider's price per minute. We said the average you'd pay per minute is about $1.37. If you choose a vendor that charges around that amount, you will multiply that by 1,800. So the equation looks like 1,800 by 1.37. Your telephone answering service will cost $2,160 per month. You must understand how to calculate how much a monthly phone answering service costs to buy the right plan for your company. You don't want to be caught unaware and pay extra for additional calls outside your minute allotment. What services come with a call answering service? Call answering services can do a lot. The most common use for phone answering services is to answer customers' questions, but there are other uses for employing one of these services. Here are a few popular benefits to enlisting call answering services. Bilingual answering services. It's common for customers speaking foreign languages to call in to have their questions answered. Bilingual services help customers that may not speak a country's primary language receive explanations for their inquiries. United States readers may be familiar with Spanish-speaking call lines to help clients that may not speak English. You'll often hear something like, "For English, press 1. For Spanish, press 2. Pressing 2 takes someone more familiar with Spanish to a Spanish-speaking line so they can receive assistance. Like any other call service, bilingual services take customer feedback and document essential client information. Bilingual call answering services come in various languages: Spanish to English, English to Spanish, French to German. Companies worldwide use bilingual services. You can expect to pay between 63 cents to $1.52 per call for bilingual call answer services. Standard call answer services. Most companies use telephone answering services to take calls when you're unable. Unable can mean clocking out for the day, at a meeting, or working out of the office. These services can consist of live people or automated responses. You'd forward your office number to the answering service, who can handle things afterward. You can tell the service how to manage received calls. They'll notate the customer's desires and questions for you to see later. Clients can have the answering service immediately notify you about urgent calls. Most answering services offer this kind of assistance to their clientele. The national average for a standard call service ranges between 67 cents and $1.90 per call. After hours emergency answering services. After-hours services are precisely what the name says. An after-hours service takes emergency calls from people that can't wait until you open the next day. The answering service ensures the calls reach someone that can take care of the urgent request. If someone calls, that can wait. The after-hours service will take a message for you to see the following day. The national average for after-hours emergency calls answered typically ranges between 91 cents to $2.04 per call, mostly because emergencies require more information to be taken in order to facilitate and take care of the customer's needs. Telephone receptionist services. Telephone receptionist services aren't well known, but they substitute for in-house receptionists. Because these telephone receptionists aren't in your office building, they're sometimes called virtual receptionists. These virtual receptionists answer calls and route messages to the right person within the organization. If the person the caller wishes to reach is busy or unavailable, the receptionist will take a message. This type of basic service generally just includes taking the name, telephone number, and a brief message. These calls can cost as little as 58 cents a call. What is a medical answering service? Medical answering services are a form of phone answering services that assist with daily patient communication. There are automated medical answering services, or you can opt for live representatives. Medical answering services help doctors better manage their patients. For example, an automated medical answering service can allow a patient to leave a message after hours or in case of bad weather. If the patient's issue is urgent, the phone answering service can get them to someone available to help. Medical answering services also help clients set appointments without needing to speak directly to their doctor, avoiding missed healthcare calls. Of course, a medical answering service helps avoid missed calls. A doctor's office is one place where missed calls are a severe problem. Missing a call can mean serious complications for patients. Many medical answering services also offer bilingual services for patients who may not fluently speak the region's primary language. If you're in Japan and don't know the language while hurt, the answering service may route you to an English-speaking call line to better assist you. Common industries served: hospitals, chiropractors, doctors, physicians, dentists, family practice. Calculate the cost. Medical answering services costs can range considerably, starting as low as 69 cents per call and climbing upwards of $3 per call. In general, doctors or hospitals can greatly control this cost fluctuation. For a standard collection of information such as patient name, telephone number, and a summary of their message, these calls will be fairly inexpensive. However, some calls may require a very complex collection of detailed information. This can range from questions related to prescriptions, emergency situations, and other healthcare-related matters. Are there contractual agreements for answering services? All answering services don't utilize contractual agreements. It depends on what vendor you intend to use. We've mainly discussed monthly service terms, but some services have contracts that specify durations. Imagine that you opt for an answering service with a 2-year contract. You can break the contract, but there is likely a hefty fee for leaving the vendor before the contract ends. What you can expect to see in a contract. A call answering service would use a contract to streamline legal agreements. The contract concisely dictates terms to protect themselves from potential issues should their client wish to stop business with them. One thing you should expect to see in a contract is how long it lasts. Monthly agreements are popular, but may also be a disadvantage to call answering service companies. Many clients may quit using the service after a few months and waste the answering service's time. Some companies have contracts that state the client must stay with the company for 6 months, a year, or longer. Once clients complete their initial term, negotiations for monthly services may begin. Payment and data ownership. The price for answering services, fee calculations, payment dates, and late payment penalties are all part of what you can expect in your agreement. The answering service should clarify whether there are late fees and how much they are. Causes for suspending service should have clearly outlined parameters also. It's also a matter of who owns the collected data. Who owns the call data if a client decides they don't want to renew their service? Does the client have full rights to the information, or does the company provide a copy? Is there a fee for requesting a copy of the call data? The contractual agreement should establish all these questions. Pros and cons of hiring a telephone answering service. You might be surprised to know many businesses still rely on phone calls. Some people either don't know how to utilize the internet or have no interest in doing so. You could argue that people still calling into businesses is a practical reason to hire an answering service. But as the title of this section implies, there are a few reasons you may not want an answering service. Below are the pros and cons of using a phone answering service. Advantages of hiring answering services: you should consider hiring a call answering service for 4 other reasons. Expand business hours, improve call quality, keep call quality consistent, save money. We'll explain in depth how these 4 pros can benefit your business. 1. You can expand business hours. There aren't many businesses that stay open 24 hours. Unfortunately, emergencies don't care about business hours or proper scheduling. There are also people wanting service beyond the average workday. You can hire an in-house team to handle after-hours customer concerns, but that's a costly option. Outsourcing is a less expensive way to ensure your company keeps going once everyone else has clocked out. 2. You'll have improved call quality. Many jobs don't have the time or resources to correctly train workers to answer phones. There's typically no dedicated team of people to work the phone lines. It's also not unusual for the people answering the phone to have other jobs within the company. While they're competent at their original task, they probably don't have the skill to handle incoming calls. 3. You'll have consistent call quality. An answering service will assign a team of trained workers to handle phone calls for your company. This team can stick to the same task they've been doing because it's the only job they have to do. Untrained in-house workers often find themselves leaving their original work to answer phones. The interrupted workflow may compromise call quality and other jobs within the company. 4. You can save money. Hiring a receptionist to handle phone calls is more expensive than outsourcing. The cost of answering services is a small percentage of management, overhead, and infrastructure costs for one or a few people. An answering service is used by the vast majority of businesses and generally has an immediate return on investment. Learn more today. If you're like the others, you will discover for yourself that this is one of the best decisions you've ever made for your business. Visit us at www.kwoteadvisor.com and learn more about building and growing your business with a live answering service.